I have taken just few countries in the first slide. From the topmost countries are the Western Hemisphere, USA, UK, Sweden, Brazil. The middle is the Asian countries, just a handful. Subsequent slides I will be showing more. So if you see India, Pakistan and Japan I have taken, and last three rows I have taken the African continent. So just concentrate in the first column. After the country column, the first column shows the deaths per million population in May 2020. Just as I said, few months into the pandemic, if you see deaths per million in the Northern Hemisphere were almost 3 digits per million. 204 was in USA, UK 414, Sweden 295, and Brazil. I have taken Brazil because subsequently Brazil fared very badly. So Brazil was less, and whereas if you see the Asian, India, Pakistan and Japan, they had only single digit. And if you see the African continent, it had just in decimal places. That was 3-4 months into the pandemic. And now if you see the data, next column is the data just 3 days back, 17th February, that is 2 days back. If you see, the gap continues in spite of so many interventions like vaccines and other interventions. The gap is now 4 digits in the Northern Hemisphere, 3 digits in the Asian, and 2 digits in the African, except for South Africa. South Africa is 4 digits. Then if you see the median age, which is very fascinating, like median age was almost around 40 in the Northern Hemisphere, and it is in the 20s in the Asian and African countries. So we are a younger population, so partly that explains the low death rate from COVID in Asian and African continents. But there are certain outliers. If you see Brazil in the Northern Hemisphere, if you see Brazil, it has got a obesity is almost touching 60, overweight percentage, that is almost 57. Other around 60% is the obesity in the Northern Hemisphere, whereas it is around 20% in the Asian and African countries. That is the fourth column after the country column. And only country in the African continent is South Africa, which has a higher obesity as 53%. Whereas other countries in South Africa, in other countries in Africa have is 26. So therefore, South Africa, the obesity is this outlier. It in African continent, it is having 4-digit deaths per million, 1611 deaths per million. And another thing to see outlier is Brazil is a younger population, around 30 years is the median age in the Northern Hemisphere, but it is a very obese, as I said, and it is having a death rate as high as the 4 digits as the Western countries. Another outlier in the Asian countries is Japan. Japan is having very high age. Its age is 48. It is higher than the Western countries also. But Japan obesity is just 24, just like Asian countries. And if you see the Japan death rate is just like Asian countries, so 167 per million. In spite of being the oldest population in the world, it is having death rate very low. So it is not age per se, but the obesity. And obesity will be a surrogate marker for other. Per se, obesity is a risk factor for COVID because there are studies which show that the virus has got affinity for fat cells, so the viral load is more in obese people. And secondly, physiologically, obese person has got compromised respiratory function, respiratory muscles. So that, and besides that, of course, obese people are more likely to be diabetic and all. So this is a population level signal. And if you see the vaccination status, the last column, if you see the vaccination status is not correlating with the fall in as we expected, because the Northern Hemisphere is the most vaccinated and the African continent is the least vaccinated. And we are not having, in spite of being least vaccinated, they are having the least impact. So this is again the vaccine as we expected, that vaccine will bring down the, it is not. And one of the best, it is not in this slide, but you can see the data. One of the best example is the Israel. Israel is the most vaccinated country. They are going 4th dose, but their rates are, yesterday they had 15,000 new cases, India had 22,000, and Israel's population is less than 1 crore, we have 140 crore. Between 140 crore, we have 22,000 cases with vaccination is about 57% coverage, and they had almost 100% vaccination coverage. They are with less than 1 crore, they had 15,000 cases and 63 deaths, and we had 300 deaths. In 140, 300 deaths and less than 1 crore, 60, you multiply 60 by 140, you can imagine, had this been a country as big as India, they would be having 6,000-7,000 deaths with this death rate, what they are having now per million, if their country has been as big as India. So this vaccination as a panacea, we have to, it's one of the tool. It cannot be totally relied. So this is, and besides that, there's another study, 68 countries and almost 3,000 American counties, they have tabulated the data, like I have tabulated on a small scale. So they have tabulated data, and they did not find any strong association between the vaccination status and incidence of COVID. So it is a good tool, definitely vaccine, but we have to use it, we have to think and keep on analyzing the data.